From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Everything that Gaddafi did in Libya that brought us into the fight there, Assad is doing, particularly the slaughter of his own people. And, you know, the world leaders are making statements, but we're not doing anything.
Syrian President Bashar al-Assad intensifies his crackdown as troops fire on protesters, killing more than 100 over the weekend. Now troops backed by tanks have moved into two key cities. We'll go to Damascus for the latest, then Yemen.
This is a coup. You call on me from the US and Europe to hand over power. Who shall I hand it over to? Those who are trying to make a coup? No.
A defiant President Ali Abdel Saleh says he'll resign within 30 days, but then describes the protests in Yemen against him as a coup and says he will not give in to foreign pressure. We'll speak with a reporter just back from Yemen. Then a massive trove of documents obtained by WikiLeaks reveals the U.S. believed many of those held at Guantanamo were innocent or low-level operatives. We'll go to London to speak with Andy Worthington, author of the book The Guantanamo Files, the stories of the 774 detainees in America's illegal prison. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The whistleblowing website WikiLeaks has begun releasing thousands of secret documents from the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo. The documents reveal the Bush and Obama administrations knowingly imprisoned over 150 innocent men for years without charge. In dozens of cases, senior U.S. commanders were said to have concluded there was no reason for the men to have been transferred to Guantanamo. Among the innocent prisoners were an 89-year-old Afghan villager and a 14-year-old who had been kidnapped. Some men were imprisoned at Guantanamo simply because they wore a certain model of Casio watch, which had been used as timers by al-Qaeda. The documents also reveal the journalist Sami al-Hajj was held at Guantanamo for 6 years, partly in order to be interrogated about his employer, the Al Jazeera network. Al-Hajj's files said he was sent to Guantanamo in order to, quote, provide information on the Al Jazeera News Network's training program, telecommunications equipment, and news-gathering operations in Chechnya, Kosovo, and Afghanistan. We'll have more on WikiLeaks' Guantanamo files later in the broadcast. Yemen's longtime President Ali Abdullah Saleh has reportedly accepted a Gulf Arab plan to hand over power within weeks following 3 months of street protests. But demonstrations are continuing because many people do not believe Saleh will keep his promise. Earlier today, at least 10 people were injured in the Yemeni city of Taiz after security forces opened fire. Syria's crackdown on anti-government protesters is intensifying. At least 20 people have died so far today in the city of Daraa after thousands of troops backed with tanks opened fire on protesters. Syria has also sealed off its border with Jordan. On Sunday, at least 13 civilians were shot dead in the town of Jabla, and at least 112 people were killed in Syria Friday, in the deadliest day since anti-government protests began last month. The Wall Street Journal reports the Obama administration's drafting an executive order to freeze the assets of senior Syrian officials. We'll have more on Syria after headlines. NATO forces bombed an office inside Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi's compound early this morning in what Libyan officials describe as an assassination attempt. 45 people were reportedly hurt in the strike, including 15 of them seriously. The attack came as two prominent Republican senators, Lindsey Graham and John McCain, called on the Obama administration to ramp up operations in Libya. McCain spoke on Sunday after returning from Libya.
This is a pretty bloody situation, and it has the earmarks of being a stalemate. Now, we hope that Gaddafi will crumble from within, but hope is not a strategy, and it's pretty obvious to me that we need, even though I was glad to see the Predator now in the fight, it's pretty obvious to me that the United States has got to play a greater role in the air power side.
Thousands of demonstrators gathered in the northern Iraqi city of Mosul Sunday to protest any extension of U.S. military presence in the country. The protesters also denounced corruption and pressed for the release of detainees. The U.S. military is due to exit Iraq by December 31st, but secret talks have begun to allow the U.S. to stay longer. Demonstrators loyal to Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr have vowed to escalate military resistance if U.S. forces do not leave by year's end.
If we are forced to face them, we will. If the occupier doesn't leave Iraq, we will face it militarily, culturally, in every way.
A U.S. federal appeals court has reinstated charges against 5 Blackwater security guards accused of killing 14 Iraqi civilians in 2007 in what's become known as the Nisour Square massacre. A 6th Blackwater guard has already pled guilty to charges of voluntary manslaughter and attempt to commit manslaughter. In Afghanistan, 500 prisoners have escaped Kandahar through a massive underground tunnel. The escaped prisoners reportedly include many Taliban commanders and fighters. They escaped from prison. Newly released data from the Japanese government indicates radioactive material was leaking into the atmosphere from the Fukushima No. 1 nuclear power plant in far greater quantities than previously estimated. The daily Yomiuri newspaper reports the level of radiation on April 5th was 6 times higher than initially reported. In other news from Japan, 25,000 Japanese soldiers are being sent into the disaster zone to scour for the bodies of nearly 12,000 people missing and presumed dead. The estimated death toll from the tsunami and earthquake is 26,000 people. On Sunday, thousands rallied in Tokyo to call for the closure of all nuclear power plants in Japan.
The people of my generation were blessed in that although we knew nuclear power was dangerous, we never had to deal with it and only received the benefits. Our generation ignored the dangers, and I really feel that that needs to be prevented in the future.
In other nuclear news, 11 women were arrested outside the Vermont Yankee nuclear plant Friday after they chained themselves to the plant's main gate. Among those arrested included the 92-year-old peace activist Frances Crowe. Pakistani demonstrators blocked a key NATO supply route to Afghanistan Sunday in a major protest against U.S. drone strikes inside Pakistan. Thousands of NATO trucks were held up by the rally, which was organized by the famous Pakistani cricket player turned politician Imran Khan.
Number one is the message to the Pakistani people that unless we come out to protect the rights of our people, no one else will defend us, certainly not this puppet leadership. And secondly, message to the Americans that this is completely counterproductive. This is only creating hatred against the Americans. This collateral damage, meaning killing of innocent women and children. All it is doing is helping the terrorists. It's helping Al-Qaeda. It is endangering the Americans. This is a tried and failed policy. And the whole object of this rally is to tell the Americans that, listen, time has come for a change of strategy.
You can go to our website at democracynow.org to see, listen to, and read all of the interviews we've done with Imran Khan over the years. Meanwhile, here in New York State, 27 people were arrested Friday at a protest against drones at the Hancock Air National Guard Base in Syracuse. Pilots stationed at Hancock now fly Reaper drones remotely over Afghanistan. The drones are armed with Hellfire missiles and laser-guided bombs. Retired Colonel Ann Wright spoke at a rally prior to the mass arrests.
As a former colonel, as a retired colonel, as a former government official who's been with the government, 40 years, I think my greatest public service is now challenging the government and challenging these things called drones. These drones, and you might as well just call them assassination machines. That's what these drones are used for. Targeted assassination, extrajudicial ultimate death for people who have not been convicted of anything.
Among those arrested was Jerry Berrigan, more than 90 years old. He's the brother of Dan Berrigan and the late Phil Berrigan, also the peace activist Kathy Kelly. Nigerian human rights groups are estimating at least 500 people have been killed in violence following last week's election of President Goodluck Jonathan. More than 65,000 people have been displaced. Most of the deaths occurred in northern states where supporters of defeated presidential candidate Muhammadu Buhari attacked churches, homes, and police stations, sparking reprisal attacks by supporters of Jonathan. Here in the United States, Congressmember Ed Markey of Massachusetts has called for a congressional investigation into the computer giant Apple after researchers revealed the iPhone was secretly collecting and storing detailed location information on the phone. The iPhone controversy continues to grow. The Wall Street Journal reports today the iPhone is collecting and storing location information even when location services are turned off. Last week, the Journal reported the iPhone and cell phones powered by Google Android software are also directly transmitting their locations back to Google and Apple. President Obama was questioned by supporters of accused Army whistleblower Bradley Manning last week at a fundraiser in San Francisco. Obama briefly discussed the issue after his event was disrupted by protesters criticizing the government's harsh treatment of Manning. The president's comments were recorded on a cell phone and may be hard to make out. Listen carefully.
We're a nation of laws. We don't individually make our own decisions about how the laws operate. No, he's still fine. He's still fine. I mean, he's being courteous and he's asking questions. No, he broke the law. You can make it harder to break the law. Well, what he did was he's dumb. No, it wasn't the same thing. What it was, Ellsberg wasn't classified the same way. So.
President Obama openly declared that Bradley Manning, who's yet to stand trial, has broken the law. Obama also responded to a question comparing Manning to journalist Dan Ellsberg, who in 1971 leaked the Pentagon Papers detailing the secret history of U.S. involvement in Vietnam. Dan Ellsberg was actually not a journalist, but a Pentagon analyst. According to President Obama, the cases are not similar because, quote, Ellsberg's material was not classified the same way. In fact, the material disclosed in the Pentagon Papers was designated top secret, the highest secrecy designation under law, whereas the material allegedly leaked by Manning to WikiLeaks was marked secret or classified, among the lowest level secrecy designations. And the pioneering bluegrass singer Hazel Dickens of West Virginia has died at the age of 75.
Oh, beautiful hills of Galilee, amid whose sings.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.